Alright, today we're going to be covering the rough-in plumbing for the new bathroom, and we're going to start with the vanity. This is where the old vanity was, and the new one's going to go in the same location. However, the new one's going to be a floating vanity, and it's going to be up a bit higher as well. So we're going to have to move the drain up as well as over to the left, and same with the hot and cold lines. Let's get to it. And so first up, we're going to be cutting out the hot and cold lines here so we can make room for the drainage pipe to go over to the left. Next up, we're going to be cutting out the drain. We got to cut out this P-trap as well, so I'm going to cut it up here as well as down here. And then I have some fittings off to the right so we can move it over to the left. You want to cut this as straight as possible, and I'm going to use an oscillating tool to do that.
Once the P-trap was cut out, I could then cut a hole through this 2x4 so that I can move the drain over to the left. Once that was ready, I could then start gluing things together, and here I'm making sure to use a multi-purpose cement as I'm gluing PVC to ABS, and I want to make sure that those adhere together. There are specific adhesives out there that are only for PVC or only for ABS, so just be careful which ones you're using on which pieces. The cement dries pretty fast, so you want to make sure that you work quickly, and then once you actually put the pieces together, you want to make sure you hold it for about 5 to 10 seconds as they will want to push out away from each other, so you want to apply some force, and then once they're dried, you can let go.
Alright, so now the drain is fully installed. I just put a cap on the end of it for now, but once the vanity is actually installed, I'll install the P-trap right here. So next we're going to be addressing the hot and cold water lines. I have some additional PEX I'll be using as well as some push to connect shark bite fittings. So let's get started.
These shark bite fittings are a bit on the pricey side, however they are extremely easy to install. As I mentioned, you just push them together and there's no soldering or crimping involved, and you don't need any extra tools, just 2 hands to push everything together. Also, you want to make sure that your last fitting is a drop ear fitting, and this way you can screw it into the wall to make sure it's nice and secure.
Alright, before we move any further, I want to address this HVAC vent. Our design calls for a shower along this entire wall, and so this HVAC vent definitely needs to move. So the plan is to pull up this subfloor, and we're going to move the vent from here over to here out of the way of the shower. But we don't really know exactly what's under here, so we're going to have to take a look and pull up the plywood and see. Let's get to it.
Before cutting this with my circular saw, I made sure to pull up any nails as you don't want to hit those with your blade, and I'm also making sure to cut directly along the floor joist so that when I go to reinstall it, I have something nice to adhere my screws to. So there's actually quite a lot going on underneath the floor here, but it's actually not as bad as you might think, and moving the HVAC vent will be pretty easy.
Alright, so now we have the floor off. I was able to see where this vent was going to, and we're actually in luck. So I'm going to be able to take off this vent here and just turn it around 180 degrees and have it vent out that way and then up the floor over here closer to the vanity, and that will get rid of the vent in the shower. Let's get to it.
This was actually pretty easy to remove as there weren't really any fasteners. It was just friction fit into position, so I just pulled it apart and was able to reuse a couple of the pieces. Then I cut my new hole into the subfloor and just rearranged the vent location, and it was all done. Then it was on to moving the shower drain.
Alright, so I just dry fit all of my connections. None of this is sealed yet, but I just wanted to make sure that everything was cut to the right length, and I'm probably going to leave this one long until I actually install the shower drain. So I was able to just barely get around the toilet drain, and now everything is nice and centered, and I don't need to cut my pan. I can just leave it as is and leave it at the maximum width. So now I just need to pull all this back out, actually glue it together, and then reinstall it. Let's get to it.
So the main reason that I'm moving the shower drain location is because I bought a pre-sloped pan with a specific drain location in that pan, and I don't want to have to cut it as I want the shower as big as possible, so I'm just making sure that this new shower drain location lines up with that pan. I then poured a gallon of water down it to make sure that there weren't any leaks, as well as to make sure that the water flowed smoothly and that it didn't back up anywhere.
I think it works. Alright, so now we have the vent moved as well as the shower drain relocated. We can now reinstall our piece of subfloor and get moving. So now that I have this subfloor screwed down, I'm going to go over the rest of the subfloor and also screw that down because those were all done with nails, as this is an older house and that's what causes squeaky floors. So I'll show you here, there's a nail right here, and if I step on it, there's a pretty big squeak. So I'm going to take a screw, put it right next to it, screw it into the joist. And now if I step on it, no squeak. So I'm gonna finish the rest of the floor. Let's get to it.
I then cut a hole in the subfloor I had reinstalled for the new drain location. Once that was complete, I could then fill in the hole from the old drain, and it actually was not too bad because I could use the new hole as an access point for my hand to hold the block in place as I marked it out. I also filled in the hole where the old vent was. Next up, I roughed in the electrical, and I'm not going to go into too many details here as I'm not a licensed electrician by any means, and I already covered a lot of these details in the bedroom makeover series, so you can go ahead and check that video out if you want to learn a little bit more about roughing in electrical, and I'll link that up in the top right hand corner. But general gist is that I installed 3 ceiling lights. These are just the LED pancake lights that just attach directly to the ceiling, and here are the boxes that you can just mount to the floor joists, and I connected each box with just a wire and then ran that back to the power coming into the room. I also installed a new vent fan and that already had power going to it, so I just had to disconnect the old one and install the new one. And then I added in some new electrical boxes, going from a 3 to a 2 gang here, and then also adding in a outlet right here for the eventual mirror that has an integrated light, so I needed a power source here. And then I also added in an outlet underneath this for the vanity that will have some under cabinet lighting as well.
Alright, the last step is to rough in the hot and cold water lines for the shower as well as the mixing valve. The old shower was right here and the mixing valve was in this wall, and here are the hot and cold water lines. Our new shower is going to be in the same position, except it's going to extend all the way over to this wall. And there are 2 main features that we want in this new shower. One is that the mixing valve is out of the water, so instead of being on this wall, we're going to put it on this wall over here. And the second thing is we want a rainfall shower head, specifically one that comes directly down from the ceiling as opposed to the wall. So the plan is to run the hot and cold lines up this wall, across the ceiling, and then down here to the mixing valve. And then the output line from the mixing valve will go back up, across, and then down right about here for the shower head. Let's get started. So here's our mixing valve, and before I install it, I'm going to put on these fittings because it'll be a bit easier to access things. First, I'm going to use Teflon tape around all of the threads. Alright, next up we're going to install the fittings. I have 2 elbows for the sides for the hot and cold lines, and then I just have a straight one for the one that's going to go out the top for the output.
I screwed these in by hand as tight as I could, and then I came back with a wrench to fully tighten them.
Alright, so now we're trying to position the mixing valve, and I'm trying to center everything. We're going to be putting this niche beneath it, and so if I put the niche in like this, I have the laser centered on the center of the niche, and therefore I'm going to use the same laser to center my mixing valve so that they are directly in line with one another.
Once the mixing valve was in, I then began running all the PEX and had to drill out some holes through both the top plates in the walls as well as the floor joists above.
Alright, so here we have our mixing valve. We have our hot on the left, cold on the right, and the output line in the middle. They go up and across the ceiling, and then the hot and cold come down and they crisscross because the hot and cold are reversed on this side, and the quick way to tell which is the hot and which is the cold is this line is going over to the toilet, so you know that's the cold line. So cold line on the right, hot line on the left. And so we just have to turn off the water to connect these, and then our other step is the outlet line, which goes here, and right here is called a drop ear. Focus on that for you. And that's what the shower head will connect to, and I'm going to install a block right above it, right there, and then screw it in. That way it's nice and secure. We're almost ready to test it.
And here's the shower head we'll be using. It's a Kohler 8-inch rainfall shower head, And I'm just screwing this in now so I can make sure that there's enough water pressure and that there's no leaks as well.
Alright, so that's going to wrap up this video of both the roughing for the electrical and the plumbing. We were able to move the drain and water lines for the new vanity. We were able to move the vent from over here to over there. And we were also able to move the shower drain for the new shower pan. We were able to install the new mixing valve for the shower as well as the rainfall shower head here above me. Then we ran 3 new can lights in the ceiling as well as got a new GFCI outlet as well as running an outlet for both the new mirror and the vanity underlighting. Hopefully you guys learned something along the way. I'm still learning myself, and so hopefully this video gives you a bit of confidence to tackle your DIY project, because I didn't really know what I was doing at the start of this, but I feel a lot more confident now, and I think you can tackle your project too. Next week we're going to be leveling the floor, so get subscribed so you can see that video, and if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like as it really helps the channel out. And as always, thanks for watching and happy building. See you next week.